Can we have our public announcement, please?
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby of this conference room. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please write your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the lobby. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please sign in on that same sheet. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available in the lobby. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Okay, just a reminder, you have to push the button to speak. So, first order of business will be the approval of the minutes from October the 24th. My record shows that I was absent and Mr. Bill Johnson. Is there a motion on those minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Miles, second by Mr. Hartman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Take a recess from the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission to go to the, it looks like the only thing that we have there is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion on that?
Move for approval.
Who's the motion? Mr. Hartman? Okay, second by Mr. McKay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Who abstains?
Is that consistent for both sets of minutes, the 10th and the 24th? Are you taking them both simultaneously?
Just the 24th.
Okay, thank you.
You did I thought mine was second for October the 10th.
Over. Just disregard everything we've done. What are the minutes we're looking at now? The 10th? Okay, who is abstaining from that one? Those two, okay. All those in favor, motion is by Mr. Hartman, second by Mr. McKay. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Move we approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Richardson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
see which items we can take by consent. First item is consideration of item 2.1, final plat and Nennisqual Stakes Edition. Anybody on the planning commission want to hear that item?
Mr. Chairman, I have a staff question on that item.
Okay. Before we do the question, is there anybody in the audience want to hear that item? Okay, staff question, go ahead, Neil.
Neil, I just wanted to double check on condition or staff comment C. It notes the City of Cheney staff and legal counsel recommended a no protest agreement be signed as a condition of the final plat. However, the subdivision committee did not require this as a condition. My question is, can the City of Cheney continue to require that no protest regardless of the comments here?
I'm going to defer to county legal.
Commissioner Foster, yes, the city of Cheney would be able to do that as part of extending any services to them. And I think also I'd add that because this particular land does adjoin the city of Cheney, once it's platted under the annexation statutes, Cheney would be able to annex it unilaterally without the consent of the property owner. So my concern, I think, when this is a subdivision committee is that I don't know that we can require no protest agreement and deny a plat because the developer or applicant may not wish to have a protest agreement. But I think that the parties could agree to have a no protest agreement, or in this case, because it does adjoin, it becomes academic because the city could annex it unilaterally.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that item? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Got to push hard. Public hearing vacation items, 3.1, vacation in a portion of the north-south alley between Washington and Ida. Anybody on the planning commission want to hear that item? Seeing none, anybody in the audience want to hear item 3.1? So then we'll take that by consent. Item 3.2, vacation of a portion of 50-foot platted street near North Woodlawn Boulevard and East Central. Anybody on the want to hear that item? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? Seeing none, we'll take that by consent. Item 3.3, vacation access control from MacArthur onto property zoned light commercial near South Hoover Road and West MacArthur. Anybody on the planning commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none, anybody in the audience wish to hear that item?
Move we approve items 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 on consent.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Green, second by Mrs. Miles. All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
Aye.
passes unanimously. Moving on to public hearing items, 4.1. Conditional use permit to permit vehicle and equipment sales, property located near East Pawnee and South Washington Avenue. Anybody on the commission want to hear that item?
Yes.
Okay. We will hear item 4.1. Item 4.2 came with a recommendation for denial, so we will hear 4.2. Item 4.3, county conditional use for mining or quarry near South Hydraulic Avenue and 71st Street South. Anybody in the planning commission want to hear that? Seeing none, anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? That-
Agent. You want to hear it? Yes.
Okay, we will hear that item. Last item is 4.4 has been deferred, so we will hear item, let's see, Yeah, we don't have anything else. Number 5.1. Okay, we need to reschedule a public hearing on the South Central Neighborhood Plan to December the 5th. Is there a motion?
Move we take the recommended action.
Have a motion by Mr. Green, second by Mr. McKay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Philip Zevenbergen with Planning Staff. This application is a request for rezoning on a strip of land towards the river property located just south of East Pawnee, about 550 feet east of South Washington. The rezoning is from TF3 to limited commercial. It's the rear 28.5 feet of the property that was used kind of as a buffer zone between the TF3 zoning that is further south along the block. The conditional use request is to allow outdoor vehicle sales on the property. As you can see, the majority of the lot is already zoned limited commercial. And with the provisions in the Unified Zoning Code, outdoor vehicle sales is permitted by conditional use in the limited commercial zone. According to the site plan, see here, the applicant has indicated there are 7 spaces for display vehicles in addition to 3 employee parking spaces and 4 customer spaces, one of those being handicap accessible. The property is accessed from Pawnee Avenue here on the north via a 20-foot drive. The applicant intends to use the existing 10-foot by 14-foot structure on the southeast portion of the property as the office. Property to the north of the site is zoned LC and TF3. The portion that's LC is actually a abandoned vehicle repair shop. It is actually not in use right now. And the property that's zoned TF3 is a church. Property to the east is LC as well as TF3. The property majority to the east here at the corner of Pawnee and Ida is a vehicle repair shop that actually has a conditional use from 1992 for vehicle sales. And actually the applicant owns and operates that as well. Property to the west is zoned limited commercial, and it's a carpet installation business. And property to the south, as you can see, is zoned TF3, and there's single family homes. There is a portion of a platted alley that dead ends into the property to the south. The very end of that property is actually was going to be heard concurrently today. It's going on consent to have a portion of that vacated. Here, kind of right at the end, the applicant does own property around that as well. The vacation of the alley is actually not in tandem with the use proposed here. The purpose in doing that is so he can help prevent illegal dumping that's going on. It's not necessarily proposed to be used in conjunction with the used car sale lot. It just happens to be being heard concurrently together. As I said before, the property at 1072 or 1027 East Pawnee, the applicant owns and is currently a used vehicle sales lot in addition to vehicle repair. There are car lots. If you go further over to Broadway, the map does not show that far, but at the corner of Pawnee and Broadway, there's the big super car guys. There's some used car lots within 1/2 mile of this location. There is no case history on the site. The site was platted in 1887. Staff is recommending approval of this, subject to several conditions. First and foremost is that it would be limited to the sale of cars and light trucks, no rental. There would be no rental of trailers, boats, motorcycles, scooters, or recreation vehicles or trucks larger than a pickup. And all the conditions within the zoning code to apply regarding the supplemental use regulations. Those include the paving requirements, screening requirements, lighting requirements, as well as sign regulations that prohibit like movable and flashing signs or portable or off-site signs are also prohibited on this property. We are asking to regulate this to just the 7 display vehicles at any given time. See, most of these are pretty standard that we come from when it comes to used car sales. And this was heard by the DAB last night, and it was passed unanimously with one abstention. And with that, I can stand for any staff questions.
Questions for staff?
I got a question. So is the business to the east open?
Yes.
Any other questions for staff? Not, if agent or applicant like to come forward? State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is
10
Eugene
minutes.
Alatin, and I live at 664 Stratford Lane.
You seen the requirements that staff has put on this change in the report?
The require of,
There have been a number of requirements and conditions.
yes, yes.
Okay, and you're in
I agree
agreement with those
definitely,
conditions?
Definitely.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Blick?
Just want to make sure the requirements were a maximum of 7 cars. Are you good with that?
Correct, yes, I agree with that. I may mention in 2006, the city claimed a domain on the property in the front where I have a dealership, and they confiscate whole front. And that's the reason we end up with this property where it's supposed to be dealership. I just find lately it was not zoned for it, and nobody told me nothing about it. But now I'm retired, so I'm just trying to supply the income with a little bit of cars, not big operation.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Move for approval of state.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Hartman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Kathy Morgan for the Planning Department. Good afternoon. This is a request for a conditional use for a used car lot at the corner of Harry Street and the the Arkansas River Bridge right there. As you can see on this zoning map, Harry Street is zoned on both the north and south side as limited commercial. There are a mix of duplexes and single-family residential zoning, as you can see from the map. So the site did have a tire sales business in it. It has been vacant for at least, I think, a year from what I could tell. It is located in the South Central Neighborhood Plan, so that was one of the considerations for the staff recommendation for denial. But you were given an option to approve with specific conditions that you have done in on other used car lots. Let me go back to the zoning. Over here at South Wichita Street, you can see the commission approved a used car lot at, I think it was 311 West Harry. So there have been a couple of small used car lots allowed in that area. If the commission chooses to approve the request for the car lot, the recommendations are in your staff report. And that, they're again limited to use of cars and light trucks or pickups, no sales of trailers, boats, motorcycles, recreational vehicles, etc. And they have to provide screening as according to the use regulations for that district. And the improvements to the property have to be completed before they can start selling cars there. We did ask for another scaled site plan to be submitted for approval on this lot. This was heard by the DAB, District Advisory Board 3 last night. They did vote to deny it 5-2-1, and that was based on the existing South Central Neighborhood Plan that recommends not putting any more new used car facilities there. So I will answer any questions.
Any questions for Kathy? Mr. Foster?
Kathy, I'm curious with the plan that we've deferred to have the hearing on, is there any new information from that that would help us in this decision?
I haven't been working with that plan. Scott, can you help out with that?
The plan that you'll have the hearing on December 5th contains the same land use recommendations as the current plan, so there's no change there.
Any additional questions? Mr. Hartman?
Did you say the site was vacant at this time?
Yes.
Did you know how long it's been vacant?
I think it's been vacant about a year.
Okay, anything else? Thank you. Would the agent or applicant like to make a presentation? If so, come to the podium. State your name and address for the record, and you will have 10 minutes.
Just state your name and your address, and then just stand for any questions.
Oh, okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Okolo Nyebuchi. My address is 735 South Smith, Oseko.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Blick?
I got a question. On the site plan, the map that you provided, at the top where it says sidewalk right there. By the photo, it actually shows a driveway. Are you closing that driveway to the street off and then putting parking out front? And how are you gonna do that?
Yes. There's going to be a gate there, but most of the car sales are going to be parked over there. The cars for sales are going to be over there, but the sidewalk is still going to remain.
Yeah, the access point here will be gated off. This will remain open, access to the site.
Okay, any additional questions? Yeah, Mr. Blick?
Question on the back side of the property. It looks like it's grass. Are you gonna be parking cars back there on the grass area, back behind the building also? Or is it just gonna be up front, all the cars?
Just up front. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more. Thank you, sir. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this issue? Yeah. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Is there a particular slide you'd like to have up there? Okay.
Janet Price, 2010 South Water Street, Wichita, Kansas. I'm the president of South Central Neighborhood Association, and I just wanted to protest. We don't really want another car lot in our neighborhood. We have a new plan that has the same stance regarding car lots and undesirable properties. We are working really hard to make a change in our neighborhood and would appreciate the support in doing that by not approving another car lot. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Mr. Richardson?
As you know, we continue to get these requests which are opposed by the plan. And, I brought this up when we did the other one on Harry Street. It seemed to me that someplace in this plan, there ought to be a way to make a car lot as acceptable use instead of just saying no. Does the plan anticipate any ways that a car lot could be an acceptable use? I mean, in the times that I voted for these, it's not open at night. It doesn't make noise. They don't have a liquor license. goes on and on. It's a placeholder. And again, it would seem to me that if there are more viable businesses to go in there, they would have bought this property and used it for that. And I think maybe I speak for some of the others on the commission. It just seems there ought to be a way to make this an acceptable use because of its rather benign nature. It generates, one of the complaints we hear about commercial is traffic, noise, all those kinds of things, and it just doesn't generate those things. And I just think that I would urge the neighborhood to come up with a way to make these a compatible use during the period of time when, frankly, they're just holding a place here on what's mostly vacant land. So that would be my thoughts on that. If there's a way that you could suggest conditions that would make these acceptable uses in the neighborhood, I think it'd make it a lot easier for everybody. Just to say we can't have anything here for what I consider a pretty benign use, it's pretty hard to say to the owner you can't use it. You can sell tires there, and if you look at the current Google aerial photo, that whole grassy area to the back was filled with old tires, which had, that's where mosquitoes breed. It's just all kinds of things, and that was okay, but not a car lot. I think that's kind of where I struggle with those. And again, that's an enforcement issue, I realize, but you can see the things that were going on in a use that is, I think, help me here, Scott's approved by right in light commercial tire sales.
You can have tire sales in limited commercial, however, you cannot store the tires outdoors as they were doing. That was not permitted.
Yeah, okay, all right. Anyway, that would be my suggestion, that somehow we can arrive at a compromise. We get these, not just in this neighborhood, but all over town as a place to use what's essentially already paved lots with small buildings on them.
Yeah, Matt Williams, planning staff. I would say that the new plan does take forward the same land use recommendations. That's the one thing that carried forward about listing the most desirable and the least desirable land uses, with the least desirable land uses being the car lots and the strip motels and I think like payday loan type of operations. That is something we could look at, maybe if that would make the commission feel more comfortable, like designating certain areas where the neighborhood is okay with additional car lots or the car lots continuing. Or potentially, if one is, recommending no car lots, because that's what we hear from the neighborhood, but if there is a car lot, maybe recommending additional restrictions on them or landscaping, things like that to give you better guidance in the future.
To me, it's like we need to decide what's wrong with the car lot and is there a way to fix it? Yeah. And again, I can see some things that make it a pretty benign use. Maybe there's a way we can fix it so it's an acceptable use to the neighborhood. Because when you have vacant businesses up and down the street, that's an economic development problem. It's not necessarily the land use that is allowed at this point in time.
Yeah, that's a discussion I can have with the neighborhood.
Mr. Blick?
Maybe a question for you. Maybe you can provide us with some data with your neighborhood plan, as in how many car lots? Because sometimes we say in this neighborhood district, there's only 5 car lots or there's 20 car lots. Maybe you can provide us with, that's why you're restricting so many car lots, is because you have so many of them.
We do. That's our concern, is that's all we're getting in our neighborhood. And our new plan asked us to start working towards new businesses in the area to try and revitalize our area. And so we feel like every time we add a new car lot, we're just getting farther involved in the same situation. And, somebody asked concerns. My concern would be we've got 50-some car lots in that range, 70 between Kellogg and 47th Street. So that's why we don't want another car lot. Would you want one? I'm opposed to that as a neighborhood person. I'm also opposed to the tire stores. I've We've got a tire store that's probably got hundreds of tires sitting out on it on Harry Street. And yet I just heard you say that's not acceptable, but I've turned it in and nothing's happened. So I have a problem with adding the problems to our area that we already have. That's where I stand. I understand working, if we could get the car lots that agreed to maintain the property and keep it up so that it looked nice, that would be one possible consideration, but that's not been our experience at this point.
Thank you. Questions for the speaker? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Is there anybody else in the audience like to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I bring it back to the commission. Mr. Hartman.
I'd just like to say, this is kind of a tough call for me anyway, because you got a piece of property there that's, doesn't look good when it's vacant. And you've got a use that the neighbors don't particularly want, but to me, I would think it would be better to have something that's maintained and not just sitting there with the weeds growing. But I agree with Lowell. I wish there was a way that we could maybe come up with some kind of a compromise that would make these more acceptable.
Can I make another comment?
Mr. Blick.
My biggest thing is, you know, the neighborhood does quite a bit with this, their plan. We've approved 2 car lots in their area. One was a Quick Trip. Totally understand what that use is. It was abandoned for so long. They were restricted where they couldn't sell anything. I was opposed to the last one. They wanted to put into, I think it was a Payday place or whatever that was on Broadway. I would be opposed to this also because based off the staff's recommendation, the neighborhood plan, and the district advisory board, I would definitely see that there's the community has spoke up on this, and I'd be against it.
Kathy, you had a comment?
Yes, I did. I wanted to add that during the time that the sign was up about the potential zone change on this, we received no calls, no emails about the change of, or the conditional use for this site.
Ms. Miles, did you have a question?
I just want to say that I am also opposed to having an additional car lot placed in this area. Again, we spent a lot of time creating these plans in hopes that we will restore an area, and if we keep doing the same things, we will keep getting the same things. Thank you.
I'll throw my 2 cents in. I understand that, and it's frustrating, but it's also frustrating to, you know, that we have properties that are vacant and available for something other than car sales, and we don't seem to have anybody coming in wanting to do that. So you can't, you know, there's the desire to do something different, but we don't get to make that decision in terms of the marketplace. You know, if no one wants to go in and do something else, then we have a vacant property for a long period of time, and that's not good either. Mr. McKay.
I have a question for staff, and you may or may not be able to answer it. I understand they're going to be reworking Harry Street where the bridge is and stuff to that effect. Is that going to have an effect on this piece of property at all? Does anybody know?
I don't think we know the answer to whether you're talking about whether the property needs to be acquired for the project.
Well, not necessarily that, just if it shows in the future plans that part of that ground is going to be taken or something, you know, then you got a conditional use. It may not fit the purpose of what regardless of what you want to put in there. That's all I'm trying to say.
There is a project to replace that bridge, so I mean, the city will be making a large investment in that area.
Did I see another hand? Mr. Nix.
So I'm brand new to this board, but when I sit here and I look at a vacant piece of property that's grown up in weeds, and we talk about a neighborhood plan where we could do some additional economic development, and we could turn it into a restaurant or any other sort of retail business, maybe it's just not time for that to happen yet. you know, the marketplace would take care of itself. When I look at that picture there and we see a property that's all grown up in weeds and it's not being used, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I understand this notion that we have plenty of car lots, but I'd rather have something there than nothing at all. That'd be my view.
Ms. Florence?
And I agree with that. I'd rather see something than nothing. Nobody has offered any type of alternatives, because somebody else could have bought that land and did something else with it. So, and as far as car lots, most of them are on Broadway. Going down that way, I didn't see any more.
Green?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request and take the 8 recommended actions that the staff has provided to us.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Nix. Any additional questions or comments? Mr. McKay?
Well, you know, once before, we approved one on South Broadway with a time limit on it, because conditional use is exactly what it is. And if you're going to do that, and I'm not opposed to, but have some kind of a way so that if something does come up, or the bridge or something, whatever it might be, that there's a way that, like if you're going to do it, say for 3 years or 5 years, whatever it might be, and then the person has to reapply, because we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years down the road or 3 years. And so if you want to do that, we did that once before on South Broadway.
I think we had the motion, but I'm not sure that I think the motion failed.
No, Mr.
No, it did not. There were the old Safeway store used to be just north of just north of Harry Street on Broadway. And that's all I said. But then another time we had one, and that was suggested, and we didn't do it that way. We turned it down. So, you know, I'm trying to get somewhere between what Lowell's trying to say and Hugh's trying to say, that, you know, I'm in the development business, so I hate to see anything set vacant for any length of time. And that's a hazard. I mean, a health hazard as well as an eyesore. So if you're going to make an approval, then I'd like to put a condition on that. It'll be a time limit, whatever that might be.
You gonna make a substitute motion?
No, I just amend what he's saying. I think I'd like to make a 3 to 5 year time limit on the conditional use, if he will accept the amendment.
I'll accept that.
Okay, what, 3 or
Is it
5?
3 or 5? 4 years.
I'll second the motion.
We have an amended motion to limit the conditional use to 4 years. Does the second agree with the amendment? Okay, now we go to staff. Are we doing anything illegal here? I hear a talk going on. I see heads shaking yes and no. What are we?
Well, Jeff's thinking, I mean, from my understanding is that if you're going to do a time limit, it needs to be commensurate with the investment that that the gentleman has made. That it needs to, you can't short them so that they have no chance of returning their money. Is that correct, Jeff?
I think probably that we've got a motion to approve with what staff recommendation and a 4 year limit. Do we want to bring the applicant back up to see if they have any comment on that? Is that okay, Mr. McKay?
Tell me what kind of formula you would use to determine whether or not the guy's going to lose money or not.
It could go from anywhere from 1 month to
Or
10 years. I don't know about
that's what I mean.
that.
What kind of
Yeah.
formula are you going to use?
The only thing I don't know. I don't have a clue for that. The only thing I could say is to make sure we make it clear that if there is a time limit on it, that the applicant can come back and apply for an extension of time.
Sure.
It's not a limit per se that's it.
No.
So-
This conditional use is only good for 4 years, and then at that point in time, they have to come back for another 4 years, or whatever the time limit might be. Or in the meantime,
I think legally it'd probably fall to a reasonable standard, whatever that means. If you put a 6-month time frame on it, I don't think anybody would think that, and that's not reasonable. Beyond something that, I think it's just a function of would like to hear the applicant's position on it, but, we'll go from there.
Let me ask the question, if we did it with a 4-year limit and a 4-year option, that they could, if they want to do?
My only reasoning for saying that is because we do have a plan that's in place. And they don't know what's going to happen in this plan, or just suggestions, recommendations. But we sitting here say, well, we hate to see property sitting, not being used. It's not helping the tax base. It's not helping anybody. And if you look at, there's areas in town that if we hadn't had conditional uses with time limits on it, they may not have been developed. Or if you say, yeah, you can do it and then leave it for infinity, then people just say, well, it's there forever, and why should I even mess with it? But if you put a time limit, that makes both sides have to perform. And if they don't perform either way, then he can come back and has the right to approve it the second time.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional comment? Mr. Foster?
Would that secondary approval be by administrative adjustment, or would it be?
So, okay, that's not part of the motion, but that's a good point. Is that we have a 4-year approval with a 4-year option that could be approved by administrative.
I don't think you want to put an option on there. I mean, my personal opinion, you just say you've got it for 4 years to do so, then you got the option when he comes back and it's done by by the staff.
Okay, so it wouldn't be an option per se, it'd just be you could apply for an extension of 4 years.
Well, you can do it one of two ways. It can be done to administrative adjustment, or we can do it here. And if the staff feels comfortable with doing the administrative adjustment, we do too, then let them do it.
Okay.
If not, it comes back to us. That's our decision at this point in time.
Okay, does that need to be in the motion?
I think yes.
Okay, so we would need to add to the motion that the staff would have the ability to extend by administrative adjustment. Is that a part of your motion?
Yes.
Is that a part of the second? Does everybody understand? Okay, everybody understands. Mr. Foster?
But staff's administrative adjustment could include that things have changed enough that it needs to come back to the planning commission. Okay. Thank you.
I think we have a motion. I think everybody's in understanding. Is there any additional questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes, what are we at, 9-2? 10-2. 10-2. Next item, please.
Good afternoon, Dave Urat with planning staff. Conditional use 2019-40 is a request to expand an existing area that was previously approved for mining and quarrying. We're on South Hydraulic, roughly a quarter mile north of East 79th Street. We're on the east side. Back in 1979, the west 40 acres was granted a conditional use permit for the sand extraction facility. At that time, there was also a zoning change that was granted in the very southeast corner of that 40 because the zoning regulations at that time required industrial zoning in order to establish the concrete facility that is on site. Now, this is the aerial photo. You can see, even though the area being mined kind of extended beyond the 40 acres, but for the most part, it covered the western 40 acres of this 80-acre tract. What they're asking to do is to now expand the conditional use to cover the entire 80 acres so that they can, the concrete operation, Rudd Concrete has, Rudd, is that Rude? Rude. Weird spelling concrete has a desire to reestablish an extraction of the material on site. According to the new owners, they're telling me that currently, to continue operating the concrete plant on site, they are hauling material in as part of the operations. By allowing them to reestablish the extraction activity on site, it reduces the amount of traffic moving material in, which should be a benefit to the entire neighborhood. The area is within the Hayesville area of influence. This item was taken to the Hayesville Planning Commission and reviewed then in front of their Planning Commission, and they unanimously recommended approval of this application. The site plan that's been provided shows the area of the proposed expansion of where they want to expand the pond area from the existing pond back to the eastern portion, and roughly an outline that will look like this. The concrete plant operation is located roughly at that portion. Some pictures of the area you can see. This is looking east at the site from, well, maybe not. Maybe this is looking north at the site, because I think this is 79th Street looking north, but that was an error on my part. This is the main entrance to the site off of Hydraulic. That is not changing. Nothing with respect to and you can see the concrete plant in the background. This is what is across the street to the west, as there are homes to the west of this property, as you can see from the map as well. This is looking south along Hydraulic. I'm at 77th Street, and you can see the entrance into the facility in the background. That's looking north along Hydraulic. I think if I go back to the map, you can see virtually all the area is zoned rural residential. There are properties that are developed to the west, across the west, on the west side of Hydraulic. Those are mostly zoned single family 20. There is some RR area. I did check virtually all the plats. The plats to create the subdivisions to the west all occurred after the operation was established. So all a good portion of the residential area in this area occurred after and or with the existing mining operation and the concrete facility in place. So we're not introducing a new use into the area for those residences. The one comment that came out of the Hayesville meeting was an area resident who was concerned with the traffic activity on Hydraulic. Now, Hydraulic is a highly improved road within the county system. If you go to the aerials, you can see in particular how Hydraulic is not only widened to a wider lane, but wide ditches, and improved to a level that it will carry a lot of traffic, and it does carry a lot of traffic. When I was down taking pictures, that was an interesting challenge because a lot of vehicle traffic, and neighborhood residents have talked about the fact that, particularly with the establishment of the casino to the south, Hydraulic seems to be a much a favored alternative route to get to and from the casino, rather than get on the turnpike or on Broadway. So we're recommending approval. We've got a number of conditions that are attached to the pretty standard language that we put on numerous similar activities that have occurred in the last few years. They're intended to replace what was granted as conditions that were attached to the facility in 1979. In many cases, we're updating and applying the higher standards and more current language over what was done in 1979. So 30 years later, we're talking about more modern language. So
any questions for Dave?
With that, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Mr. Foster.
Just one quick one, Dave. given it's zone residential to the south there, in that area, it looks like the use is pretty tight to the property line. Are there any setback requirements that need to be met?
Well, there's the only thing that is a physical improvement or on site is going to be the concrete plant, and that's all established. And they're not changing anything there. All the activity is going to occur in the extraction activity that happens further to the north. The ultimate redevelopment plan talked about in 79, and one of the conditions we're talking about is a submission of a new updated redevelopment plan that will, this is all intended to be redeveloped for residential activity once everything else occurs. If you read the language in the 1979 approval that we gave you a copy of, there was even talk at that time by the Board of Zoning Appeals that approved that at that time. They wanted to make clear, and the Planning Commission did too, that at the time we came forward with final redevelopment, when the concrete plant was no longer being supported by the mining activity, the hope was that we would rezone the property back to residential to match everything else in the neighborhood. Now, we get to that point, we're going to have to cross that bridge when we get there, because that would take an action either of motion by this board or by the county commissioners to initiate a rezoning to do that, unless the landowner chose to do it on their own. But that was the odd part of, and it was talked about specifically by the Planning Commission in 79, of the difficulty with the zoning regulations in effect at that time that required the spot rezoning to accommodate the concrete plant. Nobody had a problem with the conditional use for the mining activity that was going on. And back in 79, if you may have noticed in that language, at that time, both Hayesville and Derby Planning Commissions reviewed and commented on the case in 79. Both were supportive, but it was primarily Derby that was saying they didn't like the spot zoning of industrial. So we'll cross that bridge when we go forward.
Additional question, Mr. Hartman.
Item 13 says that this shall be valid for a period of 10 years. When does
Yes.
that timeframe start?
Would be, a timeframe would be based upon the time of approval. That's how historically those are done, or Dale?
Yeah, typically if there's groundwater approval requirements, we start the clock running whatever is the last agency that gives them the final go-ahead.
Additional questions, Mr. McKay.
My only question is, this is strictly extraction operation. They're not moving the concrete plant, or concrete plant's gonna be moved during, I'll ask that of it.
Any additional questions for Dave? Thank you. Agent or applicant, if you'd like to come forward, you'll have 10 minutes. State your name and address for the record, please.
Levi Bond with Caw Valley Engineering, 200 North Emporia Street, Suite 100. Agent for the applicant. Dave hit it on the head pretty good. This is just an expansion of the conditional use for the extraction. The concrete plant is already located here, and like you mentioned, they are completed with extraction in the existing pond, and they're trucking in sand at this point. So we're looking to bring everything back on site, decrease the traffic, and just be able to have an extraction here. And the only reason I brought the case up when I was asked if I need to comment is just on number 13, that 10 years is too tight for what they're looking at. As you guys probably know, in the old conditions, it was discussed to put a time limit on it, and at that time, planning commissions decided not to. Would prefer it to be an unlimited, but after talking with the clients, the applicants, 15 to 20 years is probably what we're looking at here. This first phase took 40. They said technology's got better, so 15 to 20 is what we're realistically looking at. And I think the only other thing I need to mention was the development plan will remain the same. They're planning on platting single-family home lots around this pond or lake, whatever you want to call it, once this extraction is completed.
Any questions for the speaker? Mr. McKay.
Well, I'll ask you the same question. I made a comment. In a lot of cases, when they're through with their sand is extraction, they make it into a subdivision or something and move the operation. That's what, they're just gonna continue to take out sand and not move the whole operation to this location.
The whole operation is already at this location, from my understanding. The concrete plant is already located here to the south. So there will be no moving of a concrete plant. It'll continue the operation the same, it's just expanding the extraction area.
Dale, did you have a comment?
Well, to get back to the setback question, they'll have to stay within the limits of what they're showing as proposed excavation. In order to go beyond that, then they would have to either get an adjustment or an amendment. So what they're showing here would be the established setbacks for how close they could get to the property line if that was what you were after.
And Dale, I think the recommended language also says that we can only be within 50 feet of a property line with any outdoor storage of equipment, and then 100 from the right-of-ways.
That's correct.
Any additional questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else from the audience wish to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
I'll make a motion we approve. The only question is the number of years. We have 10, he's saying 20, 15 to 20. So whatever the pleasure of this board might be. If you want it 20, then I'll just make it a 20.
We have a motion to approve with a time limit of 20 years.
Second.
There's a second by Ms. Miles. Any additional questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimous. Have anything else on the agenda? We stand adjourned.